we already know that xt is a wide-sense stationary process with the expectation of xt equals to eta, and eta is a constant. And then we know Rx T1 T2 equals Rx tor, and tor means T1 minus T2, and y t equals x prime t. The first question is that we should find the expectation of yt. In this case, the expectation of yt simply equals the expectation of x prime t, and we know that x prime t equals d by dt xt. In this case, we can just put d by dt outside the expectation, and that becomes d by dt the expectation of xt. Actually, we know that the expectation of xt equals to eta and is a constant, and when we take the derivative of a constant, the result should be 0. So the first question, the expectation of yt should simply be 0. And now the second question, we have to find the expectation of xt times yt. In this case, we should firstly understand some basic properties. That is, since xt is WSS process, we can know that RTT actually equals to R when tor equals to 0, and that should be a constant. In this case, when we take derivative with t to the RTT, the answer should be 0. Now we know that d by dt RTT actually equals to 0. We also know RTT, take derivative of t, that should be equal to d by dt, the expectation of xt times xt. And in this case, when we take the derivative to the expectation of xt times xt, the answer should be 2 times the expectation of xt times x prime t. Since x prime t is simply yt, that should be 2 times the expectation of xt yt. And from the result of the first formula, we know that d by dt RTT equals to 0. So in this case, the expectation of xt times yt equals to 0. And that's the answer of the question B. Question C, that we should find whether xt and yt are uncorrelated. In the first example, we already know that the expectation of yt equals to 0. So no matter the expectation of xt, the expectation of xt times the expectation of yt simply equals to 0, and that equals to the expectation of xt times yt. And from now, we know that the expectation of xt times the expectation of yt equals the expectation of the product of xt and yt, and that means that xt and yt are uncorrelated. The last question, question D, we have to prove whether xt and yt are orthogonal. In this case, we know that simply the expectation of xt times yt simply equals to 0. So they are orthogonal. Xt orthogonal yt. And that's the answer of the first question. That's all. Thanks.